have with me today Reggie Fields and Kodi McGlathery, who are legal gun owners, and they have been for some time. And we just want to have an open dialogue and a conversation about Black gun ownership and the importance of it, and really the knowledge around it, so that people can be properly equipped. And maybe we can answer some questions for some people, like, some of the questions I had that I reached out to you guys about, and you were able to help me with the process of becoming a legal first-time gun owner. So we'll just begin the conversation, and I'm just going to ask a question. I want both you guys to answer it if you feel like answering it, or if you feel like you have something to speak to it. But the first one is, I guess I'll start off with you, Kodi. But Reggie, I want you to answer the same question. How long have you been a legal gun owner, and what was your first gun?
So I've been a legal gun owner since 2008.
Okay.
Same year I got married, went to apply for my marriage license in DeKalb County, Georgia. While we filled out one set of paperwork, I filled out another for a concealed carry permit.
Okay.
And so, as long as I've been married, as long as I've been legal concealed carry weapons permit holder. Okay.
And I want to ask this. I want two questions, because I want you to answer also, what was the first gun? What actually was your first purchase?
First purchase was a Smith & Wesson 40-06.
Okay. Do you still own it today?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
It was a gun I was familiar with. I hadn't had one before, but it was pretty common. But I wasn't looking to make a huge purchase. It was a used gun, a gun shop that was not far from where I worked. I had seen it, it caught my eye, and it served its purpose.
Okay.
But as my knowledge and experience with firearms advanced, I just replaced it with something that I could get more function and use out of.
Okay. And we're going to talk about that too, a little bit more in depth. But before I switch to Reggie, I want to ask, because you mentioned that when you got married, you went ahead and filled out for the license to carry.
Mm-hmm.
So did that, by you being married, getting married and starting a family, did that play into your decision making, or was that something that you already had in mind that you wanted to do?
It's something I already had in mind I wanted to do. It was the convenience of in the particular county we lived in.
Okay. Okay.
Kind of initiated me doing it at that time. But I had already known my intent was to be a firearms owner.
Okay.
So it was just kind of.
Sounds like perfect timing too. I mean, if you get married, and you're starting a family, it's only right. And that's one of the things that we'll get into it, because we got to talk about this faith and practical, because I think that, there's a disconnection there with some people, and mostly Black people, because we're so faith oriented that we disconnect from the practical things that we have to do to provide security as well. But I'm going to throw it over to you, Reggie. If you don't mind answering that same question, how long have you been a legal gun owner, and what was your first gun?
I've been a legal gun owner since 2007. The first gun I had was a small 380. Wanted something that I could just actually go to the range with and get familiar with using a pistol. And then I had a 9mm. I had a high point 9mm. I just started out with something cheap, just to get familiar with shooting at targets, because I grew up with rifles. I've had guns in my life and around me since like 5.
Okay.
Like, where I lived and where I grew up, everybody had like a little Daisy BB gun when they was like a kid. Like, that's what you did. And everybody went hunting. So, I was shooting deer at 12.
Okay.
13.
So it was natural. It was you were.
It was a natural progression for me, because that's what I grew up around.
Right.
That was, right. Because like in some places you go, African Americans hadn't seen Black men that hunt when they were small.
And
So
not
I grew up
animals anyway.
around, right. I grew up, right. I grew up around black men that had pickup trucks that wore
With the gun rack?
camouflage gear with the gun rack at 12. So it's like, we're going to go hunting and fishing, and we're going to get in a tree stand. You're going to put on your clothes that, you know, you got your deer urine, you're going to put on you, you're going to have a sense, you're going to know where to stand,
Oh,
where
you,
to
you were a
shoot,
real
what
hunter.
time to go, the whole nine.
Yeah.
So I grew up like that. So I grew up with, you know, it was nothing to be 12 years old to see, you know, a deer laying on the back of the truck. They're going to take them to process, or they're going to hang them up upside down when they get home in the barn and gut them, and we're going to have meat.
Right.
So I kind of grew up with guns all around me. So it just was a natural progression. When I got older,
Yeah.
you know, I grew up with rifles more so than pistols. So when I got older, I was like, okay, you know, I have a family now. I got to protect my family. Let me start target practicing with pistols now, so I can get more familiar with those than rifles. So
Okay.
The first gun I shot was a shotgun, a double barrel shotgun, and 30-06 is what I was shooting back in the day.
Now I remember the 30-60. My uncle had one. Yeah. And he was a
you had
hunter.
those, and that's what you was a hunter. Yeah.
Yeah. So, why do you guys care?
Mm-hmm. You want to go first, Kodi?
It's a laundry list of reasons, if you want to be totally honest. I mean, number one, I've seen and been around enough crime to know that sometimes crime is committed in mass in communities where they think people aren't prepared to defend themselves. In communities where they feel like they're reliant on the police for protection. I'm my own first line of defense. So the reason I carry is to protect those with me in situations that are beyond my control, you know?
Right.
In addition to that, it's my legal right, and I'm going to exercise it because I'm informed.
Right.
And because I'm informed, I don't feel intimidated or less like that doesn't apply to me because I'm black.
Right.
Now I know I might have to, if I'm pulled over, I got to state it earlier and state it more often,
Right.
state it louder and clear that
Right.
I can't say that I carry 100% of the time, but I carry a lot. And, you know, depending on where I'm going and how long I'm going, whether it's out of town or whatever, you know, I look up states' reciprocity, make sure I'm legally allowed to carry there. And the states that I can't, that I travel through, I will still have my carry weapon with me, but I might remove the magazine from the actual pistol, keep it in a different place, just out of respect for the laws in that city and state. But, you know, for the most part, I carry it because I don't want to be caught not carrying.
I like it. I like it.
Oh, I like that.
So what about you? And we may get into the. Let's go ahead and get to the faith part of it too, since you're going to answer this question, Pastor Reggie, as a pastor, why do you carry, and kind of talk about the element of where, well, let me say this for myself. I came up under a doctrine and a teaching in the church where it was so religious that if you relied on anything else beside God, then your faith, you were not operating in faith. And so some of the doctrines that I was taught when I came into the church were contrary to what I learned on the street. The doctrine on the streets was, you know, like Kodi said, you know, you're going to rarely catch me without it. But that was illegal, you know, but that mindset was for protection and for security. But just speak to that from, why do you carry, and also speak to it from a faith perspective, and kind of give us some insight on the balance or the lines that between, being spiritual and being practical. Well,
the deal is this, and this is where I look at it. I look at it as, I echo my brother's sentiments exactly, right? It's a right. I have the right and I have the privilege. I am not disobeying any laws. Matter of fact, the law gives me the right to carry. So I'm going to exercise a right that was given to me. I think what we do is we take scripture and we have a misguided view of scripture, right, in terms of how we are to protect ourselves and our family. And what we've done, we've let people inside of buildings on Sunday tell us what we should not do, and we don't know the scriptures for ourselves. That's one.
Yeah.
The second part of it is, a man has every right to protect himself and his family. Yeah. And some are convinced that as I protect my family, that I'm sacrificing being a Christian or a follower of Christ. But there's examples in the Bible that shows even a man after his own heart protected himself and his interests.
Yeah.
And it's sad that, and what I can't quite understand is that it's so much more prevalent with African Americans,
yes,
than it is with other people.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. We are the smaller percentage of the people that live in America, in terms of being naturally born in America. We're about 12% right. of the population. All right. We spend the most money. We own the least. And then we let somebody convince us that we shouldn't protect ourselves.
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me. And you don't have to have scripture for people to tell you not to protect yourself. You ain't got to use scripture. If you can dumb people down enough and put them in a fear-based mentality, they won't protect themselves anyway.
Yeah.
So the deal is that why aren't you protecting yourself when you have a right? If you misconstrue scripture and God gives you an opportunity to take care of yourself, to protect yourself, that's your fault.
Yeah. So,
and that's the way I view it. And the balance of scripture is the examples are there for you to see in scripture.
Yeah, because I was going to say that. Go ahead.
It makes you no more holy to not have a gun in a particular situation than to have a gun to defend yourself. You ain't no more holy.
Yeah. We
just gonna have a funeral for you. That's all.
It's gonna be a different outcome. The reason, and you're right, because I think those two elements go together, being black and then having that religious element added on to it. And man, there's so much I want to talk about. But to your point, what you were saying about, even I think about when Jesus was in the garden and Peter pulled his sword, cut the man's ear off. Jesus didn't really reprimand him that hard. He was just saying, this just ain't the type of fight that we need to fight right now, because, in order for the purpose, for my purpose to be fulfilled, then I've got to be captured by these guys. So in other circumstances, Peter would have been, doing exactly what the Lord wanted him to do by protecting him, if it wasn't just for that one caveat in there. He's just saying, like, look, bro, it's my time, and these things have to be fulfilled. But even in that, I think that, it took me, I couldn't see those references in scripture because the religion indoctrination was kind of piled up on top of that. I spoke with another pastor friend of mine, and I asked him, was he a gun owner? And he said that, yeah, he said, man, I've been packing ever since I can remember. And I said, and we kind of talked about the faith element. He was like, no, man. He said, it doesn't mean I don't trust God. He said, I just don't trust the guy trying to break in my house. He said, it has nothing to do with me trusting God, so, but it's, like I said, it's his right to, to protect himself. And like I said, it's a right. Did you want to jump in there and comment on that before we move on?
I mean, not so much from the scripture aspect,
Okay.
but just from the right and the privilege that Reggie and I were speaking of.
Right.
You know, this is all remnants of slavery and Jim Crow.
Yeah.
Society is set up to have a subconscious reminder of second-class citizenship. And the Second Amendment is one of their main areas that they use that in. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're
And
right.
so what they do is in heavily populated areas, urban areas, they have more stringent gun laws because they want to deter the African American community from exercising that same right.
Yeah.
There's a subpopulation that feels like we're headed towards and would like to see a second civil war based on the notion that the vast majority of African Americans are still uninformed, unaware, or uncomfortable with firearms.
Yes.
And we're bridging that gap because I'm a part of a few communities that believe in teaching rights and having experience with firearms. But by and large, it's still taboo in our community to talk about it. And so therefore, just like with anything, if you learn in the wrong format, you don't learn the right foundation or principles around something. You know, it's like letting a kid find out about sex from his classmates versus having to talk with them. You know,
right? Dangerous.
Yeah,
Right.
they might understand the act, but they don't understand the consequences.
Right.
They don't understand all the considerations that need to go into it. And it's the same thing with firearms. Like if we don't make it taboo, if we put it on Front Street, we have these conversations from a place of intelligence and information. And then you let people make their own decisions.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it just amazes me that there's two things black African Americans don't do. We don't buy guns and we don't know how to swim. So you can kill us with you can kill us with water. You can kill us with a gun. We just don't acquiesce to that. And I'm not trying to sit up here and say every person who's around buy a gun. You choose that for yourself, but you do know you had a right. Watch what Luke 22:38 says. Here it is. This is what it says. Luke said the disciples said, "Lord, here are two swords." Now watch how he replied. He said, "That's enough." He said, "That's enough." So God is simply saying you have enough to use for the encounter that you need to use it for.
Yep.
And now I'm not implying if there's a whole bunch of Christians and pastors out there, I'm not implying that we're supposed to take guns and just go around and start killing everybody. But he told his disciples that the two swords were enough, and he replied empathetically that it's enough.
Yeah.
Right? You have enough to defend yourself. That and again, it's totally up to the person what they want to do. But at the same time, you have the right to defend yourself. And if you don't use that right, don't blame God for the outcome. You can't blame nobody but yourself.
Yeah. So I know Kodi alluded to, gun laws and, licensing and things like that. And even how, within those are more stringent within the Black communities. Let's kind of talk about that, because I know, and I want to talk from my experience, because I hadn't carried a gun probably since over 20 years. Number one, because I didn't think, I was uninformed. I didn't think that I could be a legal gun owner because I had a conviction, but it was a misdemeanor. And I just thought that any conviction would bar me from being able to get a license for a gun. And for all of those years, I never even took the time to inquire. I was more so concerned on how to get my record expunged so that I could be able to carry. And the process in that was kind of tedious, so I left that alone. And then I was just having a casual conversation with someone who worked in the system and said, listen, because she works with me doing activist work. And she was like, Terry, do you carry firearms? And I was like, no. She was like, yeah, you probably need to because of, the circumstances that you kind of put yourself into by being an activist. And I said, I don't think I can. Then she said, well, let's check. She called a favorite and one of her friends, checked, and she was like, yeah, you just got a misdemeanor. You're good. You don't have, as long as you don't have no domestic violence case. And I was like, nah. So, and then that's when I reached out to you guys, and man, within less than 3 weeks, I had the permit, I had the license, and I purchased my first gun. So I believe that there's a lot of other people out there. Go ahead, Kodi.
And in addition to that, if you were uninformed about a misdemeanor, there are additional opportunities to be a legal firearms owner beyond that.
Okay.
Depending on the state, counties, and reciprocities that you live in, you can be a felon, complete your term, and actually apply for the reinstatement of your privilege to carry.
Wow.
Depending on the type of charge you have. And it's up to, I believe, the governor or some county official, some role, I don't know that offhand, those privileges for convicted felons that have fulfilled paid their debt to society. So that's another thing that's misconstrued. It's like, hey, we'll tell you this just to deter you. You know?
Right. And I think that goes over into other things like voting. You know, like there are a lot of people who think they can't vote.
Exactly.
Because they've never, you know, they don't have the understanding and the knowledge.
But it's also, where's the source of that information?
Yeah.
You know, who are you trusting to get this from?
Yeah.
At some point, and I'm not knocking the barbershop, but at some point we got to fact check some of the stuff we hear in the barbershop. You know?
Yeah.
That's real. That's real.
Everything ain't 100 up there. You know, some things I said more for shock and awe.
Yeah. Street scholars.
Mm-hmm. and to speak to that aspect, when I look at scripture again, and I'm staying right here for a moment, we're supposed to protect the vulnerable, right?
Yep.
That's what we're supposed to do, right? And the vulnerable need to be protected, even when the police isn't available.
Yep.
Right? The vulnerable need to be protected. Let's say we're Christians, we're going to a restaurant. It's our Christian responsibility to intervene on those that are vulnerable to attacks. You know what I mean? It's our Christian responsibility. So we also have security in church that are not police officers. Why are they there? They're there to protect the vulnerable.
Because of what happened in North Carolina.
Perfect example.
With Dylan,
right?
Yeah.
Right? Protecting the vulnerable. Now, how can one say that I'm not vulnerable when someone breaks into my house?
Yep.
I'm at a vulnerable state. Here's why I'm at a vulnerable state. I don't know that they're coming in. And if I don't know that they're coming in, it's possible that I won't be prepared.
Yep.
Because this is the deal. No one comes to your home or email you or text you or call you to let you know that they're breaking in.
Right.
So the deal is you're in a vulnerable state. If you're downstairs, you may not be near your weapon. If you don't have a weapon, you are totally in a vulnerable state. Right?
Yeah.
So you have to understand, if God calls us as Christians to intervene, now I'm not saying, nor am I advocating that we are supposed to be gun owners that go out like we're in a wild, wild west.
Yeah,
not because we have the ability to do so. But God gives us the opportunity to protect ourselves with what he's also given David, right? With what he's given people in the Bible. The only thing is we have advanced that because we have automatic weapons now that they didn't have in that day. Because I'm going to tell you now, let's ask the question. Would David have really grabbed a rock if he had a gun? Let's just be real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would it? You know, I mean, come on. They try to put him on someone else's armor.
Right.
To actually use to knock down a giant.
It's like giving him somebody else's firearm. You're like, man, this hasn't been trusted.
But let's be real. When David was there, even though he couldn't wear the armor, the materials that he had was a lot better than, the materials, that was given to him was a lot better than what he had, because I'm sure everybody was looking around at him like, bro, you got a slingshot and a rock.
Hey man, it's not what you have, it's how you use it.
It's how you use it. But he indeed had a weapon.
Yes, he had a weapon. And he used it. And he came out victorious. Now let me ask you this. There's been a recent spike, and I've been reading up on this in black gun ownership. Gun ownership in general has spiked. Because the line was out the door when I went to, I mean, literally out the door when I went to apply for my gun license. But do you think that the spike in Black Americans arming themselves is in response to what's happening with the pandemic, the protests, the fear of possible, there was some talk about martial law, and I think Kodi even alluded to, a potential race war, or another civil war. Like there are a lot of things that I'm thinking about that could factor into it. But what do you guys think? Outside of, as you guys were stating, like me, learning that and understanding that, this is available to me. I think more people are looking into it. But what do you guys think about that? Why there's such a spike in black gun ownership?
Well, I personally think it's a spike, again, because of what we see, right? I love our people, right? I just wish our people was less reactionary and more people of preparation.
Yeah.
Prepare early and in advance for things.
Proactive,
and be those that are proactive instead of reactive. And the deal is, for the longest, it shouldn't be a spike based upon what we see. It should be at a level higher than what we've seen for years, because we have knowledge of what we should obtain to protect ourselves, right? So I always advocate this, always be ready.
So you don't have to get ready.
So you don't have to get ready.
Yeah.
So Kodi?
It's a response to what's going on, but it is the response of the last option, right? So I think we've gotten a general understanding and guidance and I think it's a common knowledge right now that, we understand what's going on with the police. And now more than ever, it's no longer a rumor or some hidden conversation in the Black community.
Yeah.
It is evidence and clear in video that the police and the people that we thought were here to protect us are really enacting atrocities against our community.
Yeah.
And finally, you're getting people to acknowledge the fact that they're saying, you know what? I can no longer trust them to protect me. And the only way to try to level the playing field is at least they'll pay me a little more respect if they believe I am armed too. Because the bulk of the crimes we've seen committed against our people are against the unarmed.
Yep.
And it subscribes itself to the concept of an armed society is a polite society.
Yeah.
So at least they feel like, at least if I arm myself without having to go as far as to use it, but having the respect of having it, maybe that will garner an opportunity that hasn't been given on some of these videos that have gone public.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of you guys, man. That was both of those responses, I believe, are in line with what's going on. It's because it's a lot. It's a lot. But I remember now. So I'm going to talk from my experience, and we definitely have to do a part 2 of this, guys. If I can get you guys back on with me again, because there's so much more information that I believe that we need to talk about.
Are we going to be able to extend this a little bit, though?
We can.
Because this is my wheelhouse.
Okay, well, we're going to keep rolling then.
Absolutely.
But I know brother Reggie got things to do. I don't want to commit him unless he's in for it.
No, I'm good.
You're in? Okay. So here's the deal. When I went in to purchase the firearm, I was very disappointed. And I don't want to make this a black against white, but I really want to make it a right against wrong. The process was seamless. I ended up purchasing a used firearm, but I filled out the paperwork, and since I had my license, of course, they didn't have to do the background check, I'm assuming, which made it, go quicker. But I knew what firearm I wanted because I had kind of talked with you guys back and forth. But because of my knowledge of firearms, it was 20 years. There's a gap, from the last time I carried a firearm. And to be honest with you, I started to reach out to you guys when I had to load the clip with the bullets, because I remember back, with the guns that we were using, none of them were new. Most of them were stolen and banged up old guns. But I remember it was a certain way we had to put the bullets in the clip to allow them to breathe so the gun doesn't get jammed. So like, these are things that I was assuming that, they were supposed to walk me through safety measures, with the gun.
There'll be none of that.
None of that. But here's the crazy thing. That was a policy that was on some of the paperwork that they had given to me, saying that the personnel from the gun store that sold me the firearm was supposed to walk or explain the safety features to me.
Yeah, that's releasing liability on their part.
That's it.
Right.
So yeah, so it was none of that. So I wanna ask, like, what do you guys think about what should a new gun owner do? They extended the opportunity to attend a gun class, but what are some things that a new gun owner should do prior to purchasing a firearm? I mean, like when I'm reaching out to you guys, and of course the firearm I purchased doesn't have an external safety. Mm-hmm. Now, if I had known that prior to, then I definitely would have changed up. I probably would have still went back and purchased the firearm because I like it, but I would have went with something with the external safety because it was the first firearm. So if you guys
this is what I say, Terry. The first thing you need to do before you buy a gun is take a gun safety course. You need to know safety. So many accidents happen.
Right.
You need to be safe. You need to learn how to, you want, man, let me tell you, the amounts of times that I've seen a person pick up a weapon and they'll turn the barrel straight to the person. And I'm like, you don't know whether it's loaded, whether it's unloaded. Most people that don't have any knowledge of gun, have a knowledge of it, they'll pick it up, and the first thing they're going to do, they're not going to handle it right. They're going to point it somewhere that it shouldn't be pointed. All those sorts of things. And it's like, look, man, I'm even scared to even show a person a gun because it's like, if you don't know what to do with it, you're going to pick it up. Well, first of all, if I show anybody a gun, I'm making sure that the clip's not in and that there's one not in the chamber. So I'm going to look at it real carefully. Then I'm going to hand it to you with a barrel pointing to the ground like, here you go. I done cleared it to make sure ain't nothing in it. Because safety is first, man. You got to have safety because you don't want to accidentally hurt anybody or yourself.
Right.
So I say, man, safety first. You got to go to a safety gun class so you can understand what's going on.
If you can't get to a class, I think you at least need to understand the basic overarching rules of dealing with a firearm.
Yeah.
Number one, assume every firearm is loaded.
Right.
And clear it yourself. Okay?
Yes.
By clear it, if it is a semi-automatic, you drop the magazine, you put rack to slide, you visually inspect the chamber. Make sure it's empty.
Yep.
If it's a revolver, you release the cylinder. You hit the release pin. You drop the shells. Even if you don't see one, you make sure there's nothing in there. Assume every firearm is loaded at all points in times until you are the one who's inspected it.
Got it.
Two, never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to destroy. Okay? So even if it's clear, regardless, you've been in a gun store, 20,000 guns that look the same, Right. So if you're in any situation, say you're going to the range, you think it's your firearm you cleared, it could be whatever. You never point a gun anywhere that you're not willing for it to fire without consequence. Number three, and I'm not going in order because I can't recite them offhand, but when you are shooting, you have to know what your target is and what is behind your target. You have to be considerate of over penetration. Okay? Like guns don't stop because they come in contact with something. A gun can go through a bullet can go through a person, It can go through a wall. It depends on the caliber, the angle. There are a lot of factors involved, but you always assume that you know what's behind your target.
Right.
That's right.
If you have a firearm, doesn't mean you have to engage or that you're in the right position to engage. You know, so like there's certain firearm principles that need to be recognized. Like instead of putting that that barrel and chamber lock in every pistol box, they could give out those 5 rules, and that would help a lot. Because I've got a bag full of locks that I don't use, but I'd love to just hand out the 5 rules of firearm safety to everybody. You know, like I think those are basic things. I think it's unrealistic to expect the place to sell you a gun to put you through a gun safety course.
Right. But that's not their responsibility.
But I do think in today's age, there's no reason for you not to do your own personal research. You know?
Yes.
Like if you can, at minimum, go to YouTube, just watch some basic stuff. You know, before I typically buy a firearm, listen, I'm frugal. I got to convince myself to spend that. So I'm watching reviews. I'm watching everything. I'm probably stalking something for a month before I make a purchase.
Okay.
Same thing.
That's the same thing you got to do about your safety and your comfort level. I think in the last 10 years, I haven't bought any firearm without already knowing how to field strip.
Yep.
Which means, you know, I can't assume that it's already oiled and greased and ready, locked and loaded, ready to go. I can't assume that all the components and fire and pin is true and the springs are still have their elasticity to them. Like I can't make those assumptions.
Right.
I also can't rely on somebody else to tell me it's good to go.
Right.
Like I'm my own last check. You know, like I need to be sure about it. So I think we need to put the ownership on us. That's the gist of it.
Okay.
Like the ownership is on us. To jump back a couple points as to why our community is reluctant to get their firearms license, it's a lot of things in addition to kind of psychological training and subliminal messaging. Dude, we got to get past being conspiracy theorists, man.
Right.
We got some brothers that won't go get a carry permit because they don't want to get their fingerprint.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
That's so true.
And have never committed a crime. They just like, I don't want them knowing I own it.
Yeah.
So you'd rather not? Like it's come on, man. We got to get past some of the small things, some of the required barrier to entry, and you got to cross it. Okay.
Yep. That's
and
so
then
true.
you've only got 2 options. You either legal carry, 3 options. You don't carry, legal carry, or you illegally carry.
Yeah.
2 of those do not have the desired outcome.
Right.
That's right.
But also, like in Georgia, you have to think about it. Like, you apply for a concealed carries permit, right?
Yes.
Which means
Yes.
it is your legal right to own a firearm. It is your legal right to carry a firearm on your person if it's in plain sight.
Right.
The permit that you apply for is to give you the privilege to not have to make it visible to everyone that you have a firearm.
Well, why do I don't want to cut you off. I just want to kind of interject there on that point. Why do I still feel, and this may just be me because of, you know, like I said, the conditions I grew up in prior to owning a gun. I've never owned a legal gun. But I still have this feeling in the back of my mind that I'm doing something, not doing something wrong, but I don't know, there's still an uneasiness that is there. And like, knowing that I have it, even in my mind, I'm thinking if I get stopped by a cop, by watching that, because that Philando Castile video is still vividly ingrained in my memory. That is still on my mind. Like, there is an uneasiness that I have that I'm hoping will eventually go away at some point.
So and I'm gonna keep it short because I need Reggie to jump in this, but
Mhm.
society isn't. I have never felt comfortable that society's at a point where they're prepared to see a black man open carry. So the reason I have a permit is so I can conceal carry. And I know what you're saying. It takes time, you know, but that time is based on understanding and information.
Right.
The same rights that
That's it.
our white counterparts are exercising are ours, but they're only ours if we demand those rights to be
Yeah.
exercised.
Yeah.
If we wait for them to tell us it's okay for us to exercise the Second Amendment, then we'll never exercise the Second Amendment because it doesn't benefit the power structure for the lack of a better term, for the Caucasian community that's at the top of the food chain in this society. It doesn't benefit them the level of playing field in this area.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the uneasiness has to do with, one, what you've seen,
Yeah.
and two, all three of us know this, and we'll agree to this. I know we will, that we're not viewed the way everyone else is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Double standard.
We're just not. So when we're pulled over by the police, we're not viewed, right? The other day, I saw on Facebook that the police had taken out his pistol, pointed it at a person, and the person was chasing him with the knife.
Yeah.
Well, the person
I've
doesn't
seen
look
those.
like the three of us.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen those videos. Yeah.
Now, we know if that was one of us, or
Different.
someone
Totally different.
of our color, it wouldn't have been a chase situation.
Yep.
It would have been we call in the ambulance, we picking him up, we put him on a stretcher, and
Yep.
he did not comply.
And it would have
That's
been
what
a justifiable use of force is how they would have coded that.
justifiable use of force.
So,
Absolutely.
and,
So-
and to that point, there even been colleges to do field examples where they had a white man walk down the street with an AR-15 on his back and a pistol on his hip. One car showed up, asked him what was going on. They got a call. Said, I'm exercising my Second Amendment right.
Mhm.
They let him go. They said, cool. Thanks for letting us know. We'll call the station, let them know if they get any calls, just dismiss it. You're just exercising your Second Amendment right.
There you
They
go.
waited a few days later, sent a black man, same condition, down the same street. In excess of 8 police cars showed pistols drawn
Mhm.
without asking any questions. There is a double standard.
Yes, it is.
However, that double standard exists whether you're armed or not.
Yeah.
There you go.
So no matter what's going on, I've never gotten a ticket. Well, I won't say never, but in the times, more times than not, when I've been pulled over for something, they've always called for a second car for assistance. This is just what happens when dealing with us. Is that there is an inherent fear of the power of the black man
Yeah.
that they have to exercise this show of force with.
Yeah.
But if that fear doesn't keep you in the house, that fear shouldn't keep you from owning a firearm.